Mystery scenarios in role-playing games have a notorious reputation for going off the rails. The players might miss a critical clue, take an unexpected detour, or fail a skill check, causing the entire investigation to stall. Before long, the group is left floundering, uncertain of what to do next, while the GM feels like they've made a mistake. What was meant to be an engaging and immersive experience devolves into frustration. Let's look at a typical example. The PCs are investigating a murder scene, but they don't think to check outside, so they miss the wolf tracks that turn into human footprints. They fail their search check and they never find the hidden love letters revealing a romantic rivalry. They come across a broken crate labeled Danner's Meats, but instead of revisiting the local butcher, they assume that the clue points towards the meat processing plant and end up wasting hours on that dead end. These moments are familiar to anyone who's tried to run a mystery at the table. They're part of what lead many to believe that mystery scenarios don't work in TTRPGs. After all, in all the classic detective stories, the protagonist is always some form of genius. Someone like Sherlock Holmes who can piece together cryptic small clues with uncanny precision. The players, however, are not Sherlock Holmes. So, how could they possibly solve a mystery? This assumption is common, but it's also wrong. It highlights a real issue, but not an insurmountable one. For example, in the book A Study in Scarlet, Sherlock Holmes is investigating the scene of a murder. Holmes examines a small pile of ashes and then immediately identifies them as coming from a trichinopoly cigar. Translating that moment to the game table, the players would need to do a lot of things. First, they would need to successfully search the room. Second would be to care enough about investigating the ashes. Third would be a skill check to identify them. And fourth would be to recognize their significance and make the correct deduction. That's 4 separate failure points. And if understanding that clue is necessary to move the plot forward, say the players need to visit the cigar shop to learn who bought that brand, then this one piece of evidence becomes a choke point. Miss any of those 4 steps, and the investigation grinds to a halt. This is the core issue. Mystery scenarios in TTRPGs aren't just vulnerable to a single choke point, but they often contain a network of them, stacked one on top of the other. The more your adventure relies on any single clue to advance, the more fragile it becomes. The solution? Eliminate the choke points. The key to running a successful mystery is designing them with redundancy. You want multiple paths that lead to the same conclusion. This idea is often referred to as the 3-clue rule. For any conclusion you want the players to make, include at least 3 clues that can point them in that direction. Why 3? Well, because players will almost always overlook the first one, misinterpret the second one, and maybe, just maybe, stumble onto the third. Or, if you're lucky and more realistically, they'll see all 3 and then be able to build confidence in their deduction. But the goal isn't to hand them the answers. It's to give them opportunities to reach it and have them identify it beforehand. This also reflects how mysteries actually work, not in just fiction, but in real investigations. Rarely does one clue ever solve anything, and often it's never enough evidence to actually convict someone. Instead, investigators gather evidence, cross-reference details, eliminate false leads, and gradually build a working theory. Take another Study in Scarlet example. When wrapping up a case, Watson asks Holmes about how he was able to determine a man's height in the investigation. And Sherlock replies with, "Why, the height of a man in 9 cases out of 10 could be told from the length of his stride. I had this fellow's stride both on the clay outside and on the dust within. Then I had a way of checking my calculation. When a man writes on a wall, his instinct leads him to write above the level of his own eyes. Now that writing was just over 6 foot from the ground, so from there it was child's play. This small deduction illustrates a key principle of mystery storytelling. Conclusions emerge from the accumulation and cross-referencing of multiple clues, rather than hinging on a single piece of evidence, gradually narrowing down the possibilities until only the truth remains. As Sherlock Holmes himself famously said, "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Try to think of each of your clues as a stepping stone in your plan. The players will find clue A, draw conclusions on B, and then maybe head to where they need to go with C. With 3 clues, you don't just have one path for them to follow. You've got 2 backup options. And when you remember that no plan survives contact with the players, you'll quickly see why having backup plans are a lifesaver, especially in a scenario that is only moved forward by finding or deducing these certain facts. Ideally, of course, the players will uncover all 3 clues. There's nothing wrong with that at all. They can use them to validate their theories, strengthen their conclusions, and just like Sherlock Holmes, they can be irrefutable at that point. And don't worry, at some point you'll likely catch yourself thinking, this clue is so obvious. There's no way that the players won't figure it all out with just this. But in my experience, you're probably mistaken. After all, you're the one designing the mystery. You have the context, and you already know the solution. This makes it quite hard to assess whether something is actually truly obvious from the player's perspective. It's really hard to remove yourself and your knowledge from that situation. Even if you're right, though, what's the harm in adding an extra clue? It's better to be safe than sorry, and as we've stated before, it only further validates their theories. A choke point can be any issue that they must resolve to move forward. Let's make another example. Imagine a secret door concealing some random, unimportant treasure. Finding it, yes, is a challenge, but it isn't a choke point. One solution is enough. A successful search check or investigation roll as the rules provide for it, and you're home free. But let's say something vital, like an important artifact, lies behind that door, and the players must find it. Now the secret door becomes a choke point, and I'll ensure there are at least 3 ways to discover it. Maybe the players succeed on that search or investigation check, or they find a note in another location where a cultist has written instructions to hide the artifact behind the statue of Ra. Or perhaps they come across a journal from the architect of the complex referencing the door, or they uncover a second secret door leading to the same location. Other options might include the villain attempting to escape through one of these secret doors, or the possibility of interrogating a captured cultist. Once you identify a choke point, adding alternate solutions usually gets quite easy. Some GMs might argue that too many solutions makes things too easy, but in reality, more options makes the scenario more engaging, especially in situations where the table turns to you because they're just not sure what to do next. You have multiple points you can pull from, and there's bound to be something that you can grab and push it forward to continue moving. Take our secret door, for example. Initially, it was just a dice roll. But with alternative solutions, now it's tied to a specific architect and designer. It's used by cultists. It's potentially exploited as a means of escape. Mystery design and adventure design really should look like a web of a network of clues that point toward a major conclusion from multiple directions. I'm not saying you always need to have every little thing figured out for all of your choke points. You don't need to have everything written. Every time you write an adventure, you don't have to have every solution all filled out in your notes. But think about these things, because if at a baseline for some point of your adventure, you have players will do this, then they will move this way. Well, a lot of the times, players don't do this. And so this way isn't an option. So when you've spent the time thinking about it, thought about other solutions, thought about other ideas, you can find inspiration in the moment to improv what you need to move the story forward. Let's return to our earlier werewolf murder mystery. Let's say the killer is a werewolf who targets his ex-lovers and hides during the day working at a local butcher shop. You want the players to reach 3 main conclusions. 1. The killer is a werewolf. 2. The victims are all former lovers. 3. They should check out the butcher shop. So you provide 3 clues for each of these. He's a werewolf, so we have tracks that shift from paw prints to footprints, oversized claw marks on the victims, and a victim's handgun loaded with silver bullets. He's a former lover. Each victim seems to have love letters from the same man, a victim's diary referencing a love triangle, and photographs or pictures of the same man in multiple homes. And third, checking out the butcher shop, a broken crate marked Danner's Meats at one of the crime scenes, a crumpled note saying, "Meet me at the butcher shop," or even an eyewitness account of someone seeing more than one of these victims frequenting the butcher shop. Just like that, you've created a scenario with 9 possible paths to success that can all lead to the others. And if you keep the mindset that more clues are better, you'll find even more opportunities. For instance, imagine dropping a reference to the butcher shop in one of the love letters, or adding charcoal sketches of wolves to one of the diaries. The best part of this approach is that by including a variety of clues, you also open the door for subtle and esoteric hints. If the players notice them, they'll feel great for cracking the code. But even if they don't, that's totally okay. They've still got plenty of other clues to follow before they can piece it together. And once they've solved the mystery, they'll enjoy going back through and piecing those little links together and the hidden clues and making the payoff all the sweeter when it all really makes sense. Despite your best efforts, there will be times when the players hit a dead end. They might not understand what the clues mean, they could be overlooking them, or they've used the clues to reach the wrong conclusion and are heading down a completely misguided path. In my experience, this often happens when the players don't even realize that there's a mystery to solve. Not every mystery is as obvious as a dead body. This is where having a true backup plan becomes invaluable. The solution then is to introduce something active to move the plot forward. Raymond Chandler, an American British novelist and screenwriter, said it perfectly. His advice for these moments was simple. Have a guy with a gun walk through the door. And I usually follow a similar approach. The bad guy or another party learns that the players are investigating, and change ensues. At the table, that might look like a few different things. The villain could send a thug to silence the players. Another body turns up tied to the same mystery, or a witness comes forward after feeling threatened, or maybe even the players themselves suddenly find themselves accused of the crime, or in a broader sense, trigger the next part of the antagonist's plan, depending on what that looks like. This tactic creates a new location or event that the players must engage with, pushing the narrative forward. Key here isn't just about making something happen, it's about introducing events that provide new clues and new context, preferably multiple clues, that the players can follow up on after the event. This keeps the story moving while giving them the opportunity to unravel the mystery themselves and feel like it came about naturally. In the worst case scenario, you might need a get out of jail free card, a backup to ensure the story ends on a satisfying note. For instance, in our werewolf mystery, if the players are completely stuck, you could have the werewolf show up and attempt to kill them, thinking that they're getting too close. While it isn't ideal, it's not the resolution we were hoping for. It serves as a last resort to get things back where they need to be on track. Now, there's another common aspect of mysteries that I want to talk about really quick, and that's this guy. Yeah. Red herrings. They're a staple of the mystery genre. All clues point to X, but surprise! The real culprit is Y. When designing an RPG scenario, however, red herrings are way overrated. I'm not saying that you can never use them, but I would advise using them extremely sparingly, with caution and with some rules. There are two main reasons for this. First, guiding the players to make the right deduction is already challenging. Adding a red herring only complicates things further. More importantly, once the players reach a conclusion, they'll often latch on to it. Convincing them to let go of that conclusion and reconsider evidence can be incredibly difficult, especially as we're working through NPCs. And most importantly, second, there's usually no need to invent a red herring. The players are likely to create their own. Even if you design the adventure with nothing but clues pointing clearly to the true culprit, I can almost guarantee you that the players will suspect at least 1 to 3 other people before they figure out who's actually behind the crime. They'll become attached to these suspicions, and they'll start spinning elaborate theories about how it's possible and how the evidence fits their chosen suspect. And so as we walk them through our process, we can move them onto the right track with all of our web of clues. Now that being said, if you really want to use something like a red herring, make sure it has clear contradictions. For example, the murders continue and a new body is found after the suspect is already in custody. This provides that definite nope moment and refocuses their attention. Now, I've been ranting on for some time now, but in other words, the real challenge when designing a mystery is avoiding too much chaos. Throwing things like red herrings and one-way paths into the mix is akin to giving the players a few drinks before you let them drive. It's more likely to lead to a wreck than anything helpful. Basically, what this all boils down to is simple. Plan multiple paths to success. Encourage player ingenuity, and give yourself a failsafe. And remember the 3-clue rule. For any conclusion you want the PCs to make, include at least 3 clues. And well, that just about wraps up today's video, but before we go, I gotta know, what do you think? How do you like to approach your story structure when approaching a mystery? Do you like to use the 3-clue rule? Or have I maybe inspired you to maybe try it? Let me know down in the comments below so we can keep this conversation going, and share any of your tips and tricks that you like to use to navigate this very issue. And in the spirit of this video, I'll say that there are 3 ways that you can help out the channel. So don't forget to leave a like, smack that subscribe button, and if you'd like to further support the channel and have access to exclusive perks and more down the road, we now have channel memberships available here on the site. All of it helps the channel out a ton. With that said, thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.